On May 5th, 2026, the director of the FBI sat down and said on the record that the United States government has assembled the first tranche of classified UAP documents, and they are coming out very soon. The same day, the government's most prominent UAP whistleblower said he has confidence disclosure will escalate in the next 60 to 90 days. And the chair of the House Oversight Task Force on Declassification, Congresswoman leading the charge on the 46 classified videos, went on record 6 days earlier saying she has personally viewed inside a classified facility things she describes as being of non-human origin and creation. She said she doesn't call them aliens. She said when the files are declassified, she will hold a press conference and show the public exactly what she saw. Also this week, a Dutch expedition ship called the MV Hondius is stranded in the South Atlantic with 150 people on board, 3 already dead from a virus with no treatment, and the nearest country refusing to open its ports. Scientists identified 4 more sailors from one of history's most doomed voyages using DNA, including one man whose body has been misidentified for 166 years. Blood vessels were found preserved inside the fossilized bones of a T-Rex. Voyager 1 powered down a 49-year-old instrument to stay alive. Scientists propose an experiment that might prove time itself exists in quantum superposition. And this morning, a pond organism was found carrying DNA that doesn't follow the rules of life as we know them. Welcome back to the Infinite Rabbit Hole.
Imagine that this line represents the time, present 1985, future, past. Prior to this point in time, somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985. Alternate to you, me, and Einstein, but reality for everyone else.
What's up, everyone? I'm Jeremy Socha, and you're listening to Infinite Rabbit Hole, your weekly briefing on the unexplained. Tonight is a solo episode, just me. We had to move our typical recording day up due to me being at a convention on our typical recording day, and it unfortunately didn't fit everyone's schedule, so I'm riding solo tonight. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps more people find the show. You can find us on infiniterabbithole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we're very close to 1,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. We're almost there. Quick announcements. My book, UF Elmwood, is available now on Amazon. Search Jeremy Socha, spelled S-O-C-H-A, or U.F. Elmwood. Link is in the description, of course. CapCon was last weekend, and it was a great time. My next live appearance will be at Elmwood UFO Days during the last full weekend of July here in beautiful Wisconsin. Details coming through our social posts, so make sure you're following us everywhere. All right, let's get into it. For our quick hits, these are the stories from the last 10 days that deserve your attention, even if we don't have time to go deep on them tonight. A Dutch polar expedition ship called MV Hondius left Ushuaia, Argentina, the southernmost city in the world, on April 1st. The leading hypothesis is that Dutch passengers contracted Andes hantavirus during a road trip through South America before boarding. The first passenger died on April 11th while the ship was still at sea. His body couldn't be removed for 2 weeks. His wife disembarked, sick, and later died in a South African hospital. A third passenger died on board May 2nd. As of tonight, 5 confirmed cases, 3 suspected, 3 dead, 150 people still aboard, and a Swiss patient confirmed after disembarking. The ship tried to dock in Tenerife to evacuate its passengers. The president of the Canary Islands refused. The World Health Organization said Spain has a moral and legal obligation to assist. The critical detail here: Andes hantavirus is the only member of its family known to transmit between humans, even if done so rarely. There is no treatment. Supportive care is all they have. Moving on. On May 6, University of Waterloo researchers announced they've used DNA analysis to identify 4 more sailors from the 1845 Franklin expedition, bringing the total to 6 of the 129 who never came home. The standout is Harry Pegler, captain of the foretop on HMS Terror. In 1859, searchers found a body in the Arctic carrying Pegler's personal documents but wearing clothing that didn't match his rank. For 166 years, nobody could definitively say who that body was. A living descendant's DNA finally answered the question. Another of the newly identified sailors turned out to be an ancestor of a BBC journalist who had previously worked on a genealogy program. He described hearing from the research team as a huge surprise. The same research group previously identified the cannibalized remains of HMS Erebus, Captain James Fitzjames. These 4 show no such evidence. The Franklin expedition is one of the most haunting stories in exploration history, and after 181 years, science is still putting names to the dead. Moving on. Scientists found preserved blood vessels inside the fossilized bones of a T-Rex named Scotty. Intact vascular structures surviving inside 66-million-year-old fossils in a way that challenges established limits on what biological material can endure. Dinosaur DNA is still out of reach, and this doesn't change that. But soft tissue surviving in bones from the Cretaceous raises a serious question. What else might be hiding inside fossils that have already been dug up, studied, cataloged, and put in museum cases for decades? The answer is turning out to be more interesting than textbooks suggested. Moving on. On May 4th, NASA made a deliberate decision about Voyager 1. The spacecraft, launched in 1977, now more than 24 billion kilometers from Earth, the most distant human-made object in existence, is running critically low on power. Engineers powered down one of its science instruments to conserve enough electricity to keep the rest functioning. Engineers decided which parts of a 49-year-old machine got to keep existing out in interstellar space, where a signal takes more than 22 hours each way. It is still transmitting. It is still being listened to, one instrument fewer than it had last week. Moving on. Scientists teleported the quantum state of a photon between 2 separate independent quantum dots over a 270-meter open-air link. Nothing through fiber, not in a controlled laboratory environment either. Through open air, between 2 devices that were not physically connected. Quantum information, or the precise state of a particle, moved from one location to another without traveling through the intervening space in any conventional sense. First time it's been demonstrated between independent devices through the atmosphere. A real step toward what physicists call a quantum internet, a communications network that could be, by the laws of physics, impossible to intercept without detection. Moving on. A paper published in Physical Review Letters proposed an experiment using atomic clocks that could determine whether time itself exists in quantum superposition. Whether it can pass at different rates simultaneously. In Einstein's relativity, time is not fixed. It slows near massive objects and speeds up in weaker gravity. In quantum mechanics, systems can exist in multiple states at once until observed. When you combine those 2 frameworks, some physicists argue that time itself should be able to exist in superposition as well, ticking at 2 different rates at the same moment. Researchers at Stevens Institute of Technology and NIST have now proposed a specific experimental setup using atomic clocks sensitive enough to test the idea. If confirmed, the implications for how we understand reality itself are substantial. Moving on. This one came out this morning. Researchers using a new single-cell DNA sequencing method were running a routine experiment when they discovered a microscopic pond organism carrying genetic code that doesn't follow the near universal rules of DNA, from bacteria to blue whales to humans, which uses essentially the same genetic rulebook, the same codons, the same stop signals, the same fundamental language. This organism doesn't. The researchers described the discovery as accidental. They weren't looking for this. The organism was sitting in a pond quietly running a different operating system than every other form of life we've ever studied. Research is ongoing and implications are still being worked out, but the headline's real. Life on Earth may have more variation in its fundamental code than we thought. And a 13-year-old boy walking through a field in Berlin's Spandau district found a small bronze coin that turned out to be the first ancient Greek artifact ever discovered in the city. Minted in Troy between 281 and 261 BCE, more than 2,300 years ago. It depicts Athena on both sides. Archaeologists believe it was placed as a burial gift at what may be an early Iron Age gravesite. The mystery is how it got there at all. Greeks of that era called Germanic tribes barbarians and left no written records of contact with them. Nobody knows whether it was carried by a traveler, a mercenary, or a trader, or whether it changed hands a dozen times before ending up in a field outside Berlin, where a teenager found it with a metal detector on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. All right, I know this one's going quick, travelers, but gotta do what we gotta do on these solo days. So we're gonna head right into briefing one. Please, if you have questions that I'm not discussing the answer to, leave a comment on YouTube. Spotify allows comments. Just let me know, and I'll do my best to answer for you. I know you guys are used to conversations. I appreciate you still hanging with me today. All right, the first briefing. On April 29th, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts formally concluded their investigation into the murder of MIT plasma physicist Nuno Loureiro. He was shot at his Brookline home in December 2025 by Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, a 48-year-old Portuguese national who had also killed two people at Brown University 2 days earlier. After 260-plus interviews and 5 months of investigation, the conclusion is Valente acted entirely alone, no nexus to terrorism, motivated by personal grievance, and Brown represented the program that expelled him. Loureiro represented a former classmate who suppressed him. He recorded confessional videos after the attacks with no remorse and no clear articulation of why, beyond a sense of failure and blame. Case seems to be closed, on this one at least. That closure matters in two directions. It definitively removes one of the list's most prominent cases from the pattern. The director of MIT's Fusion Research Center was not targeted because of what he knew about classified programs. He was targeted because of who he went to school with 30 years ago. That is the documented answer. But it does nothing to explain the remaining cases. McCaslin has been missing since February 27th. Chavez and Casillas vanished from Los Alamos 53 days apart under nearly identical circumstances. Garcia disappeared from the Kansas City National Security Campus in August of 2025. Monica Riza never came back from a hike in June 2025. Amy Eskridge died in 2022 with no public investigative record ever released, and authorities began reviewing her case in April. All open, all still unexplained. Now, Wikipedia has an article titled Missing Scientists Conspiracy Theory. The FBI is still investigating. House Oversight is still investigating. The April 27th briefings produce no public update. Some cases are resolving with conventional explanations. The ones that aren't resolving are still the hardest to explain. Now, I want to be careful here because I've been covering the story for months now, and I feel the pull of the pattern the same way everyone else does. The Loureiro closure is important. It's a reminder that the most satisfying explanation isn't always the most dramatic one. A man with a personal grudge, a tragedy with a mundane cause. That's real and it matters. But I also can't explain why two people vanished from Los Alamos in the same summer under the same circumstances. And until I can, I'm not going to close the book on the story and we'll keep reporting on it. It is what it is. Briefing 2. This one is exactly in the IRH lane. On April 27th, a study published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience out of McEwen University presented tightly controlled experimental evidence that sound frequencies below the threshold of human hearing can alter mood, raise stress hormones, and produce exactly the kind of free-floating unease that people report in allegedly haunted locations, without the people involved having any awareness that anything is affecting them. 36 participants were placed in a room with either calming or unsettling audio. Half of each group were simultaneously exposed to 18 hertz infrasound, just below the lower boundary of human hearing. Nobody detected it, but saliva samples showed measurably elevated cortisol in those exposed, and they reported feeling more irritable and described the music as sadder. The lead researcher, Professor Rodney Schmaltz, framed it directly, quote, "Consider visiting a supposedly haunted building. Your mood shifts. You feel agitated, but you can't see or hear anything unusual. In an old building, infrasound is present, particularly in basements where aging pipes and ventilation systems produce low-frequency vibrations. If you were told the building was haunted, you might attribute that agitation to something supernatural." Now, I've been in buildings that felt wrong. I think most people have. And I've always been genuinely uncertain whether that feeling is memory, suggestion, architecture, or something else. This study doesn't answer all of that, but it answers some of it. And the answer is your pipes actually might be haunting you. There's something both deflating and fascinating about that. But let's connect this to a case from 1998 that's been part of the paranormal research conversation ever since. Engineer Vic Tandy was working alone late at night in a reportedly haunted medical laboratory in Coventry, England. He felt intensely anxious, cold, and watched. He saw a gray shape moving at the edge of his peripheral vision. When he turned to look, it was gone. The next day, he noticed the metal rod clamped to his workbench was vibrating at its resonant frequency. He traced the source to a new extractor fan generating a standing wave of 18.98 hertz, just under 19 hertz. With its node sitting exactly at his workstation, he went on to find the same frequency at several other reportedly haunted locations and published his findings in a paper he called "The Ghost in the Machine." The McEwen study is the best controlled evidence yet that Tandy was right. The sample size of 36 is small and suggestibility is difficult to fully isolate, but the consistent finding is that the body responds to frequencies it cannot consciously hear, and that the response maps onto the phenomenology of haunting, unexplained dread, peripheral visual disturbances, the sense of presence. It doesn't explain everything, but it explains something. Now, Vic Tandy is one of my favorite stories in this whole space. An engineer in a haunted lab who traced a ghost to a fan. That's the IRH story in one sentence. The weird thing turns out to be real, and the explanation turns out to be weirder than you expected. Just not the same brand of weird. Infrasound from an extractor fan producing a standard wave that made a man see a ghost. The world is strange all the way down. All right, we're making record time. We're going to have this done probably within 30 minutes. It's going to be a pretty quick one for you because we're heading right into the deep dive. And I want to be careful to do this one right because there's a lot of noise around the story. And I think IRH owes its audience something more precise than noise. Let me lay out what is actually documented this week in sequence, and then I'll tell you what I make of it. On April 29th, Congresswoman Luna, chair of the House Oversight Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets, the person leading the congressional charge on the 46 classified UAP videos, went on the New York Post's Podforce One podcast and said this, quote, "I have seen evidence in a SCIF that leads me to believe there are things we cannot explain. I have observed things that are of non-human origin and creation. That's my opinion." She said she referenced missile deflecting objects in a pyramid-shaped craft. She said she prefers the term interdimensional beings over aliens. She said, quote, "When it's declassified, I will have a press conference and I'll show you exactly what we saw." On the same day, Trump confirmed the administration plans to release UAP material through a centralized digital platform, the clearest signal yet that alien.gov is the intended portal. On May 5th, FBI Director Patel went on Sean Hannity's podcast and said the FBI has already delivered its first tranche of UAP documents to the Pentagon-led interagency committee. His exact words, quote, "We've already delivered our first wave of information to that committee, and they're going to be publicly releasing the information very soon. We are all for it. There is nothing in this subject that we don't want released." The same day, David Grush, the former Air Force intelligence officer whose 2023 congressional testimony transformed the public UAP conversation, now an official advisor to Congressman Burleson, said he has confidence that disclosure will reach a tipping point within 60 to 90 days. He warned that forces inside the government are still actively working to suppress files before release, and he made a distinction, I think, as being underreported. The most significant material, he said, is not videos. It's what he calls empirical holdings, physical evidence, materials, things that can be independently verified. And then, almost immediately, former Arrow director Sean Kirkpatrick went public to temper expectations. He told PBS not to expect photos of alien beings being interviewed. He said the files are likely to contain unresolved sensor data, radar returns, pilot reports, the kind of inconclusive material Arrow has been producing for years. PBS also ran an analysis noting that Trump has a documented pattern of hyping record releases that produce little. The JFK files are the template. Executive directive, public fanfare, coordinated rollout, underwhelming delivery. We still don't really know the full story. Yes, we know more, but we don't know it all. Okay, here's what I actually think. Sitting with all this, right? Luna's statement is the most significant of the week, and it's getting less attention than Patel's. She's not a fringe figure speculating on a podcast. She's the chair of the task force with the authority to demand these files. She went into a SCIF and came out saying she saw things she believes are non-human origin. She said it publicly, on the record. That is a first. A sitting congresswoman with direct classified access making that statement specifically about what she personally observed is something that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. And then there's Grush's framing, which I keep coming back to. He's not saying the videos are the story. He's saying the physical materials are the story. And if that's true, then the entire public conversation, the 46 videos, the deadlines, the Patel announcement, may be focused on the wrong thing entirely. If what Grush is pointing at is real, the question isn't what does the footage show? The question is what do the materials consist of? Where are they? And who controls them? The question has never had a formal congressional deadline attached to it. Nobody has demanded a specific physical inventory with a specific date. I also want to hold Kirkpatrick's caveat seriously because he's in some camps earned that. I wouldn't necessarily say that he's earned it, but I got to give you both sides of the story here, right? He ran Arrow. He spent years looking at his data. His position is that most of what's in those files is genuinely unresolved because the data is weak, not because what the data shows is extraordinary. That's a reasonable thing for a person in his position to believe, and I'm not going to dismiss it, but I also noticed that the data is weak and the data shows something we cannot explain are not mutually exclusive. Weak data with an unexplained origin is still unexplained. The honest IRH framework for what comes next is this. The interagency process is real and has presidential authority. Files have been assembled and delivered to the committee. A congresswoman with SCIF access says she has seen things of non-human origin. The FBI director says release is imminent. A credentialed whistleblower says 60 to 90 days and warns of active suppression. A former Arrow director says manage your expectations. And the administration that ordered this has a track record of overpromising on records being released. All of those things are true simultaneously. What comes out when very soon arrives will tell us which of those things mattered more. And this show will be here to tell you what it was, of course. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful to be covering this moment. I've been doing this show through all of it. From the count of 5 scientists to 11, from the February executive order to Patel saying the files are delivered, from alien.gov going dark to Luna saying she'll hold a press conference when it's declassified. I don't know what comes next, but I know it's worth watching, and I know we'll be watching it together. All right. I know that was a quick one, everybody, but that's it for tonight's solo episode. In the quick hits, the MV Hondios stranded in the South Atlantic with 150 people aboard, 3 dead from the Andes hantavirus. The Canary Islands refusing to dock them while the WHO, or the World Health Organization, says Spain has a moral obligation. The Franklin expedition's dead still coming home. Harry Pegler identified after 166 years of uncertainty. Blood vessels preserved inside T-Rex bones from 66 million years ago. Voyager 1 powering down an instrument to survive at the edge of interstellar space. Quantum teleportation through 270 meters of open air between 2 independent devices. Atomic clocks that may be able to test whether time itself exists in quantum superposition. A pond organism found today with a genetic code that doesn't follow the rules of life, and a 2,300-year-old Greek coin from Troy found in a Berlin field by a 13-year-old, the first Greek antiquity ever found in a city with no explanation for how it got there. In briefing 1, the Loureiro case is closed. Personal grievance, no connection to classified programs. The case that closes is the one that always had the clearest human explanation. The cases that remain open, McCaslin, Chavez, Cassius, Garcia, Riza, and Eskridge, are still the ones without answers. And in briefing 2, the science of haunted buildings. 18 hertz infrasound below human hearing measurably alters cortisol and mood in people who can't detect it. Vic Tandy traced a ghost to a standing wave from an extractor fan in 1998. The new McEwen University study is the best controlled evidence yet that he was right. It doesn't explain everything, but it explains some. And in the deep dive, I try to lay out what we actually know right now about the UAP file releases. Luna saying she personally observed things of non-human origin inside a SCIF. Patel saying the files are delivered and coming very soon. Grush saying 60 to 90 days and pointing at physical materials as the real story. Kirkpatrick saying don't get your hopes up. And the honest framework. All of those things are simultaneously true. And what comes out when very soon arrives will tell us which one mattered more. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave a rating and review, and find us on InfiniteRabbitHole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And if you're on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, we are so close right now. As of this moment, we're 40 subscriptions away. Please hit that button. UF Elmwood, my book, is available now. Came out May 4th on Amazon. Search Jeremy Socha or UF Elmwood, or just click the link in the description. And Elmwood UFO Days is the last full weekend of July. Watch our socials for details. We're back next week. Hopefully the whole crew will be recording on our typical night. Whatever very soon means should be clearer by then. Who knows? Whatever it is, we'll be reporting on it. Until then, keep your eyes open. Keep asking questions, and remember, the truth is out there. You just got to know where to look. I'm Jeremy Socha, and we'll see you in the next fork in the path of the infinite rabbit hole. Goodbye, travelers, and have a good night. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. If you're looking for more of our stuff, head on over to InfiniteRabbitHole.com, where you can find links to all the podcast players that we are available on, and even our video platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. While you're there, make sure to check out all the links for our socials and hit that follow so you know when all the new stuff from our podcast comes out. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Goodbye.